Hello and welcome back. My name is Jennifer and I make stuff. And in this video I'm gonna show you how to turn a cheap looking evergreen tree into a high-end beautiful Christmas tree. So the first step of this transformation is to give this evergreen tree a flocked effect, meaning a frosty snow-covered finish. As you can see here, I'm first using some white calligraphy ink, but I realized that I'm going to need way more paint to cover the entire tree, so I actually switched to a wall paint that I had. It is a water-based wall paint, and then I just diluted it with some water to make it more runny, so I could start brightening up all of the green needles around the entire tree. Now, like I said, this is a cheap evergreen tree, and what I mean when I'm saying cheap is the fact that yes, this tree cost me like $60 when I bought it, and for some people that might not be cheap, but compared to other evergreen trees that were made of PVC in the same size as this one was pretty cheap, and it has a little bit more of a cheaper looking style when it comes to needles and the shape and the overall look of the tree. So what I'm doing here when I'm applying all of the paint is that I'm trying to go back and forth over all of these needles to give them more of a fuller effect, because some of the needles, they want to lay flat, so it doesn't really look that realistic. But if I go over with the brush back and forth, it actually starts to change the shape of all the needles and start to make all of the branches of the evergreen tree look much fuller, and that gives it a much more realistic effect and an overall fullness to the entire tree. When that was done, I decided to add some of the paint into a spray bottle and then spray over the entire surface of the tree to make sure that I fill in areas that I might have missed, but also start to brighten up the tree even more and create more of that snow-covered frosty effect. And I repeated the same process on the other parts of the evergreen tree. This is a 3-piece tree, so it has a bottom piece, a middle piece, and then we have the top piece. So I felt that the easiest way for me to be able to reach all of the branches and make sure that they are all covered with all of the paint, I decided to work in steps. So I started with the bottom part, and then the middle part, and then last the top piece of the tree. And before I'm removing the thread that is keeping all of the branches standing upright, I start to actually apply the paint on the underside of all the branches, so I know that even the underneath part of all the branches has this white paint. So it's just not the top part that is having this snow effect. Because this is going to give more the illusion that this is a silver evergreen tree, and also the fact that it might look like it has a frosty effect all over the tree. Another tip to make sure that your tree is looking fuller: if you have a evergreen tree that is having this aluminum or steel wire inside of it, you can bend the branches to the shape that you want them to be in, and to get a more fuller effect and a more realistic look, you can make sure that it has more of an asymmetrical look to it. So some of the branches are going upwards and some going down, some are a bit bent, some are more straight, so it looks like it has more of a natural flow and shape to each branch. Then after that I decided to go with thicker consistency of the same white paint and start to paint on the top surface of each branch so it looks like it has more of that snow covered effect. And then I'm doing this back and forth and start to spray some more paint if I feel like I want to brighten up the tree even more before I'm going to move on to the next step. So this is going to give more of that clusters of snow to the tree, and this is a snow spray, but you can use flocking powder, you can even use baking soda and then spray some water on it so it starts to expand and give more of that snow covered effect to the tree branches. And you can do this as much as you want depending on how much snow effect you want to your Christmas tree. Next step is to add some lights to this Christmas tree, and I'm using these 10-strand string lights that has these tiny LED lights in them, and I try to place them in a way that makes it look like the tree has this light from within look. So I'm trying to place all of the strands of the string lights more closer to the center of the tree and hide behind some of the tree branches. Then to add some more lights to the tree, I added these wireless silver chrome candle looking LED lights and distribute them all over the tree so it gets an even brightness all over the Christmas tree. Now it's time to decorate the entire Christmas tree with some Christmas baubles. And I'm starting first with all of my white Christmas baubles. I like to start in sections with each shade at a time, so I know that I have distributed them all over the tree evenly, so it doesn't look like some areas have more of one shade and others have more of another shade. I just want an even application all over the tree. So I do the same thing, but this time I'm using the silver Christmas baubles. Some are silver chrome and some are silver glitter, just like I did before, just adding them evenly all over the Christmas tree. And I'm doing this exact same steps to the other sets of all of my Christmas baubles. Now I'm going for a rose gold and champagne pink theme this year, and all these Christmas baubles are actually Christmas baubles that I made in another video where I transformed some of my older Christmas baubles and gave them new life and a completely new makeover. So if you would be interested to see how I made these Christmas baubles, stay tuned for that video. Now this time I'm going to do something that I've never done before, and it's a completely different variant of a tree topper. Every year I have done this with a Christmas star or a tree star, but I wanted to do something different, and I found some pictures on Pinterest on some who had made some tree toppers with branches and other decorations, so I wanted to make something similar to that. So I'm just using an old tree star that I have here and start covering it with some glitter to get more of that evergreen needle effect, so it looks more like it's a natural organic part of the actual tree. And then I spray painted the star with some similar shades to the rose gold theme that I'm going for. And I also spray painted some branches gold and with some rose metallic just to blend in with the star and enhance the theme that I'm going for. When the spray paint had dried, I wanted to cover the star with some glitter to make it shine and sparkle in some lights. So I'm using just some Mod Podge here, stippling it on, and then just pouring some of this custom-made mix that I had. If you want to know how I made this mix, then stay tuned for the video of my Christmas baubles, and you can see the glitters that I used for this. And then I poured some silver glitter, some holographic glitter, just to add more sparkle and magic to this Christmas star. And then to make sure that the glitter stays in place, I just sprayed the entire star with some fixative. Now I want to enhance more of that flocked effect with some snow, so I'm using some of that white wall paint and just cover the entire star with this white paint. And I'm doing this exact same thing to these branches that I have here to make them look like they're covered with snow and will blend in much better with the star. And the great thing about having this glitter wrapped around the foot, it actually made the branches easily just slide into the foot of the tree star and made them stay in place with no issue at all, and they didn't actually move around, they just stayed there, so I could move on to the next step and add more details to this tree topper. And then I just added more and more of these natural sources that I had. I just had some leftover branches and some other twigs and wild plants that had been dried, and just placed them on this tree topper and covered them with some snow like I did with other parts of the tree topper, and then just continue adding more details until I felt like I was happy with the overall shape of the tree topper. And then I decided to use the fixative again and sprayed it all over the surface of the tree topper. And while the fixative was still wet, I decided to pour more of the glitter on top of all of the branches and all that, so they would have sort of like a frosty effect, as if the snow that these branches are covered with are sparkling in the sunlight. And then as a final touch to the tree topper, I added a silver rhinestone to the center of the star. I also had some of these golden branches that I just had laying around, and they are all covered with a lot of this golden glitter, since I had a lot of these Christmas baubles that are covered with some golden glitters, so that's why I decided to add these to the tree topper. And then it was time to add the tree topper to, well, the top of the tree. But I realized when I added the tree topper to, well, the top of the tree, that it was actually having this gap from where the tree stops and where the actual branches of the tree topper begin. So, well, I had to make some more branches and try to place them in a way that it looked like the tree topper actually blended in with the actual tree. And I also added some other details, like some of these loose evergreen needle tiny twigs that I also covered with snow, and then I also added some of these pine cones that were also covered with some snow, just to give it more of that natural effect, or more like nature effect, so it looks like it actually grows out of the tree. And the more I added, the more it started to look like it actually belonged on top of the Christmas tree. I felt that I wanted to add something extra to this tree to make it look more full and a little bit more luxurious or high-end or a little bit more fancy. So the first thing I added to the Christmas tree were these silver bead strands that I decided to trim down so I could easily just distribute them all over the Christmas tree much more even, and it was also an easier way to apply all of these string beads to the tree instead of having to go around the entire tree to apply these beads. And then I used some of these golden glittery ribbons that I had that actually has a tiny steel wire in them, so you can bend them to the shape that you want. And I decided to make sort of a twisted look to them so they would actually have a nice fall to them when you add them to the Christmas tree. And to get a softer look to all of these string lights that I have, but also get more of a fullness and enhance the snow effect to the tree, I just added some simple cotton. Then I placed them in areas that I felt looked a little bit too sparse, or if I wanted to add some more fullness to them, or just soften the brightness of all of these string lights and make it look like it more has this kind of glow from within look to the entire tree. Then as a final step, I added these snow-covered pine cones to enhance the nature effect that I have with the tree topper. And that's it! That's how I turn my average looking evergreen tree into more of a high-end looking, fancy, beautiful Christmas tree. I hope you really enjoyed this video and maybe got some idea to make a cheaper looking tree look more like it was expensive or more realistic looking. Get some ideas on how you can decorate it in a way that makes it look even more fancy and luxurious than it did before. So that's it for this video. Thank you so much for watching, and stay tuned for the upcoming video where I'm going to give some of my Christmas baubles a completely new makeover with a rose gold theme. So see you in that video.